So welcome everybody to this seminar, Achieving 2030 Food Nutrition Targets Through Water Security. And this is hosted by the Stockholm International Water Institute, together with co-conveners Alliance for the Green Revolution in Africa, Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, Water and Energy for Food Initiative, and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. My name is Jenny Barron, and I will be your chair for this session. I'm normally a professor at the Swedish University of Agriculture Science, but today I represent the SIWI Science Program Committee of the World Water Week. And together with me to help this session, we have Cindy Cherry of Sutari and Patricia Mayas from FAO that will help further on in this session. This session is in 3 parts, and it focused specifically on the role and opportunity of water security to attain critical SDGs around food and nutrition. This is a conversation where we build on the 2021 UN Food System Summit and aim to contribute to and tie in the issue of water for food nutrition nexus into the upcoming UN Water Conference in March 2023. And in this 3-part seminar, we invite and count on your contributions in addition to our speakers and panelists. So please note this session is recorded, and please use the chat for question, comments, and do add your name and affiliation when you post your comments and questions. We will try to moderate these questions and comments during the session and possibly afterwards as well if you direct them to specific speakers. You can also share suggestions and use the session Pathable platform for commentaries, and we will capture them after the session. To get to know each other, which is not easy in a virtual space like this, I would still like to invite you all to come and join in the Pathable platform where we have a poll, and let us know where are you located as a professional or as a person, and what sector do you represent as we try to have a conversation about the nexus food, nutrition, and water. So if you have if you're able to switch to Pathable and enter your, I'll try to do it myself here, and we'll see. Cindy, do we see any responses here?
We do. I will share them now.
And
just for those who are trying to figure out where that is, if you go into the chat box in Pathable at the top where you see on the screen chat, next to it is polls, that's where you can go in and answer this question.
And we have at least a few responses here, and hopefully you will find this polls and we can have an idea on who was with us in these first sessions here today. So with that, I think we will move on to the program, and I would like to invite, let me first check if our keynote speaker has been able to join us. Dr. Agnes Kalibata, is she with us? Can you please confirm? No? Okay, in that case, we'll move on in the program. We have a lot of eminent speakers to let us start this conversation here today. And I would like to invite Dr. Sasha Koshima, Head of Water, Deputy Director of Land and Water Division at the Food and Agriculture Organization. Sasha, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to present on behalf of many colleagues at FAO, Land and Water Division, also other divisions in forestry, economics, along with numerous international scientists that we have been working with, including SIWI and others in leading research institutes. To culminate in what I will present is the FAO's State of the World's Land and Water Resources for Food and Agriculture, which is SOLA short. which is a decadal report. So it's every 10 years we publish this flagship report on the state of the world's land and water for food and agriculture. This was launched at this year's UNCCD, which is the Convention for Combating Desertification and Drought, which is a huge issue at the moment. So I will briefly go into this huge report with a short synthesis policy document that you can find online. Next, please. So in 2011, we've published the first report, the SOLAL 2011, and the recent assessments in the current report, the projections and also the scenarios point to accelerated trends in the depletion of land and water resources, and also the associated loss of biodiversity in the key ecosystem functions. Hence, this new SOLAL synthesis and report provides the current information on the status of land, soil, and water resources and the evidence of the changing and alarming trends in our resource use. With in mind, the objective is to build momentum and awareness of the status of the land and water resources, highlighting the risks and informing on also related opportunities and challenges. It also aims to underline the essential contribution for appropriate and targeted policies and investments, as well as institutional response needed. Next slide. The growing demand for food is placing the pressures, as the report finds, on all these natural resources. And FAO estimates agriculture in 2050, we will need to produce 50% more food, feed, and biofuel than we did in 2012. In 2020, between 720 to 811 million people faced hunger and malnutrition. And recognition and actions are needed to redirect the focus onto land on which over 95% of the world's food is produced. Also, I want to add that land use per capita declined by 20% between 2000 and 2017. So in this same period, per capita of land use per capita has decreased. So to do this, information on the status of land, soil, and water resources and the evidence of the changing and alarming trends in resource use are needed. And the current SOLAR report is response to this existential need for response and policy options. Next slide. Agriculture, from this slide, it shows various land use changes between 2000 and 2019 in million hectares. So agriculture uses some 4,750 million hectares, which is in the middle of the slide, the row, for cultivating crops and for raising animals. This is total of cropland and pasture land. Over the past nearly a decade, agricultural land area declined by 128 million hectares. And land under irrigation, even though has increased by 53 million hectares. Meadows and pasture has declined by 191 million hectares. So this slide gives some of the details of the various land use changes, and that rapid growth in urban areas has displaced all types of agricultural land use and other land use. This has increased by 220 million hectares since 2000. That's the last row. Next slide will give you some of the maps on the state of the interconnection of land, soil, and waters, and that they are stretched to the limit. The interconnection of these systems, as shown here, the water stress, which is the areas in red and yellow of the land, soil, and water are stretched, and it's very high in all the basins with intense irrigated agriculture, and also in densely populated cities, particularly where available freshwater resources are sparse due to climatic conditions. Next slide. As agriculture intensifies, there's also the converging evidence indicating the extent and severity of land degradation, where soil is eroded and nutrients are depleted and salinity of soil increases. So if you focus on the red areas here, it's very similar to the previous slide, and that the human-induced degradation affects 34% of agricultural land. That's 1,660 million hectares. So extending cultivation into areas of marginal land quality and increasing intensification on existing cropland are constrained also by soil erosion and depletion of carbon, nutrients, and soil biodiversity. Next slide. Our farming systems are becoming polarized through the studies. And you can see the large-scale commercial holdings dominate agricultural land use and concentrating many millions of the smallholders on lands susceptible to degradation and water scarcity. Although there are estimated 608 million farm holdings in the world, farm size distribution is highly skewed towards large farms, here shown more than 50% are over 500 hectares. And the number of farms is also slightly skewed towards small holdings, with 84% of farms below 2 hectares, which occupy only 12% of the world's farmland. Thus, the policy interventions for land management to address this and the continued viability of the smallholder farmers is critical for local food security in many low-income countries. Next slide. This map shows the regions at risk based on the status and trends of land resources. Land, soil, and water management need to better synergize and to keep these systems at play. And this is essential to maintain the required rates of agricultural growth without further compromising the environmental services. And also the human-induced land degradation and water scarcity will raise risk levels for agricultural production and ecosystem services. And we know that climate change further adds the uncertainty of the agroclimatic risks faced by the producers, particularly those that are least able to buffer the shocks and who are food insecure. Next slide. Land and water resources would need to be safeguarded, and there are only a narrow margin for reversing the trends in resource degradation and depletion. The complexity and scale of the task should not be undermined. Land, soil, and water management need to better synergize to keep systems in balance. And this is essential to maintain the required rates of agricultural growth without further compromising environmental services for generations to come. Next slide. Land and water governance has to be more inclusive and adaptive. Inclusive governance is essential for allocating and managing the natural resources, and technical solutions are needed to mitigate land degradation and water scarcity. And both of these are needed to succeed with inclusive governance. So planning and management of land, soil, and water resources through effective land and water governance are needed. And the publication goes into a huge section on the response in regarding to management and governance issues. So adopting inclusive land and governance includes developing coordinated policy, legal, and institutional arrangements at various levels, and devolving governance and addressing power differentials and adopting adaptive governance and structural change as needed. Next slide. And planning for integrated solutions can help define the critical thresholds in natural resource systems to reverse the trend of land and water degradation. And planning needs to consider a package of combined technical, institutional governance at various scales and the financial support to match it. And any advance in transforming the food systems to meet future demand will require a focus on integrated land and water resource planning and monitoring. and also monitoring the effects of climate change in relation to agroecological suitability will prove essential for planning resource use along the entire food value chain. Next slide. You can keep on clicking. So innovation is needed in technical and managerial processes, so they can be targeted to address priorities and accelerate transformation in food systems. And caring for neglected land soils, combating drought, and coping water scarcity can be addressed through the adoption of new and appropriate technologies and management approaches. So the use of digital informatics, such as remote sensing and other management tools and options, can increase productivity if innovation in management and technology can be taken to scale. Next slide. So agriculture support systems and investments can be redirected towards the social and environmental gains derived from integrated land and water management. There's scope for progressive, multi-phased financing of agriculture projects that can be linked with redirected subsidies to keep land and water systems in play. The main scope of the international investment in agriculture sectors has included agriculture development and governance, irrigation and drainage improvements, water resources management, climate change adaptation and mitigation, and to a lesser extent, land and soil resources management. So investment in all these topics and in integrated interventions at scale show great promise and can be supported through innovative financing and incentive mechanisms. Next slide. In short, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. A full package of workable solutions is now available to enhance food production and tackle the many threats from land degradation to increased water scarcity and declining water and soil quality. But these will succeed only when there is a conducive enabling environment, a strong political will, sound policies, and inclusive governance structure, and full participatory planning across all sectors and landscapes. Next slide. I think this concludes my presentation for a very comprehensive report. Thank you very much, and the action starts now, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to present this report at the Stockholm World Water Week. Over to you, Jenny.
Thank you very much, Sasha, for bringing us up to speed with the SOLAV report and the status, which is really dire, but also with some positives on the end on how we can move forward. And with that, I've been told that Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President of the Alliance of Green Revolution of Africa, is with us. Can you please confirm?
I'm here. Thank you.
Fantastic, wonderful. Thank you. We're very honored that you took your time and could and here today you're here in your capacity or former capacity as a UN special envoy of the UN Food Systems Summit in 2021, and we have specifically asked you to share some sort of key messages and key conclusions out of that huge effort in 21 on food systems. And you have about 5 minutes, so I just want to keep it short and sweet and to the point. Thank you, Agnes. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, and really want to apologize for coming in a bit late. I had challenges coming into the Zoom, but I'm here and I'm glad that I'm here today. So thank you for the invitation. And I also wanted to thank all the partners that are working with us in this World Water Week. The World Water Week is an opportunity for us to really reflect and recognize some of the challenges that we are living with, but also an opportunity for us to recognize some of the opportunities that we could deploy when it comes to how we manage the world's challenges today. it would be, it is tempting to say that I don't need to say that water is important to all of us. But if you look at what has happened in the last few days, what you see around the world in the last few months, the depleting or reducing sense of moisture in the world, if I might call it that, and the catch-up that is happening around how our world is reacting and the damage that is beginning to happen is enormous. So we definitely need to start reminding ourselves what it means to have the right balance in our ecosystem, like Sasha was presenting today. And she brought out some very, very important elements of the balances that are needed in our ecosystem. But specifically going back to the question of water and the fact that its importance led to it being secured as SDG 6, which is the SDG that allows us to focus on how water is used in the world today, and put it in the centrality of the 2030 agenda, really gives us an opportunity to look at what has happened so far, what some of the things that we can start building on. And I just wanted to also recognize that it's challenges like this that led the Secretary General to putting the Food Systems Summit forward, so that we as a community can start thinking about some of the challenges we see in the food systems, in our food system, the level of dysfunctionality that is beginning to come out of our food system, the level of degradation of landscapes, of biodiversity that is beginning to come out of our food system based on how we are using the environment. All these were discussed in the Food System Summit. A lot of recommendations were put forward, which have been compiled and put together in the document that was put out by the scientific community, which is called the Science Reader, and it is available. When you look at what is happening, excuse me, when you look at what is happening from an African perspective, we still see that 60%, I mean, I was shocked by Sasha's presentation. I was talking about 66% of Africa being arid and semi-arid. But right now, based on what you presented today, we are seeing that even more than 70% of Africa is under water stress. It's less than a third that is not under water stress. The impact of this, as we've seen in many other places, is increasing conflict over water resources. That is not going to go away. That is something that we have to live with. We are already beginning to see some of those in a number of areas around the Sahel, but also we are seeing the impact in terms of just the levels of increasing food insecurity that is associated with climate change as droughts begin to bite. It's actually, in Africa, it's actually clear that we have less than 1,000 meters cubed of water per capita per year, which really then puts a whole lot of stress in the food production ecosystem. This raises a number of issues that were brought out in the Food System Summit and that we need to focus on. We need to come up with integrated approaches to water management. And again, Sasha brought them out and some of the things that need to be done around integration. And I'm not going to rehash those. We need to have policies. We need to be very clear around policies, around shared water resources and how we manage these water resources, knowing fully well that again, misuse is going to cause even more damage. And we need to, excuse me, and we need to come up with innovations that allow us to embrace, or even to come up with policies that allow us to embrace some of the innovations that are available in our ecosystem as we go forward. So just to give you an example, some of the work we are doing here in Africa, we are seeing that farmers that are embracing regenerative agriculture in some of the areas we are working in are actually surviving droughts better than farmers that are not embracing regenerative agriculture. We know that we have so much water that comes during specific periods of rain seasons, and that water runs off and is not harvested or captured for future use. So there are opportunities like that we can start harnessing and looking at, but definitely if we don't, the increasing scarcity of water and the increasing impact it will have on our food system is something that will lead to further deterioration of our food systems, and something that we cannot afford. So without going into all the details of many of the things that we have brought out in the Food Systems Summit, clearly investments need to happen to ensure that people that have limited access to water resources, farming communities, smallholders, and others have better access. Investments need to happen to protect some of the water resources that we already have that are dwindling at a very fast rate. And again, like was said earlier, we need to embrace integrated approaches that allow us to be able to understand that water is not just about producing food, it's also about livestock, it's also about cities, it's also about so many other things in our livelihoods that we need to integrate. We do have many opportunities, we do have many lessons from our food system, from previous work that we can learn from. If you look at what Ethiopia has done on increasing agriculture by harnessing and harvesting water, but also by better management of the landscapes. If you look at what China did by restoring the lost plateau, actually managed to restore water resources in that plateau. We have the same examples in Rwanda. So I think the opportunity to rehabilitate our food system and embrace some of the opportunities of rehabilitating our food system, and therefore rehabilitate our water ecosystem, are huge. And it's not going to be possible to run viable food systems, to run food system that can afford to protect the environment if we don't protect our water resources. So there's a whole lot of chicken and egg here that we need to worry about, but I really wanted to recognize that you only gave me 5 minutes, and I want to close on, again, thanking you all for putting this together to remind us of what is at stake here in Africa at the equator. Probably there's no, I wouldn't say better place, or there's no worse place to see the impact of lack of water that happens to communities when climate change hits in. And I really hope that we use this opportunity to understand how we can reconstitute the environment. We reconstitute the environment, our landscapes, and our water will come back. I keep telling some of the farmers we work with that we need to embrace regenerative agriculture. We need to embrace reforestation. We need to embrace tree planting, not because everybody's worried about everything else, but because we need to bring back our rains. So I just want you to leave you with this message that the ability to rehabilitate, to reconstitute our landscapes, to bring back water in places where it is needed the most is actually within reach. But it is just a window, and we need to make sure that that window does not close on us. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And again, I appreciate having been part of this, and I look forward to the outcome of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agnes, for joining us and for contributing on these reflections, taking us from the Food System Summit and to where we are today, and providing those good examples on where change is really happening, building on the positive trends that Sasha highlighted as well. So thanks so much, Agnes. We appreciate if you can stay to the panel, but understand if you have other commitments. But once again, thank you.